What's up, everybody? It's been a while, but welcome to another edition of Model Breakdown. This is a series in which I talk entirely too long about a particular kit in question, be it a single model kit, full squad, vehicle, what have you. And I give you, firstly, just a breakdown of what the kit is, right? And then my thoughts and opinions on it, likes and dislikes, things people would normally do looking at different models and whatnot. From there, I'll give a very basic kind of a thought ramble on building and painting said model. It's nothing intricate, it's not a how-to or tutorial, just some things to consider perhaps and ways in which I would personally probably tackle said model to paint it easily, effectively, still have it look sharp. All of you out there with greater skill than I, and there are plenty of you out there, will no doubt do even greater things and go even more intricate, but it's not about that. It's just about how to get it done and looking good without having to sweat about it and do some crazy techniques. And then after that, I'm going to give my thoughts on whether or not I think the model needs to be redone. And regardless of my thoughts on that, if GW was to redo the model tomorrow, what would I like to see done and why? So that last part is going to be a bit different to ramble about because I am talking about an old model that is redone. In fact, it is Ragnar Blackmane, as you know from the title. This is going to be his old model, as the title says. His new model comes out alongside Gaskell's new model for the Space Wolves v Orc stuff. There was a cool little article done on Through the Ages for Ragnar and Gaskell. So I thought it would be fun to talk about the old model first so we can see where it came from and then where we are. Because I'll do the new model at some point in the future. So, with that said, as the article states, this model came out during Rogue Trader, which is the first edition of Warhammer 40k. So, that is an old model, considering that this is basically, I believe, 1987-ish is when Rogue Trader came out. And I think it lasted until like 92 or so, 93? I'm not sure exactly, but somewhere in the early 90s. Regardless of when in that time period this model debuted, it is definitely an old model. So, for its time, it is packed with good detail. It suffers from old model syndrome, meaning you can just tell looking at it, it's an older model. You can tell looking at it, the stature of this model compared to newer Space Marine models, not even Primaris, just newer Space Marine models, is not the same. A little slenderer, you could say. The older bolt pistol really gives it away as an older model. And then the stance, this single plane of existence stance, if you will, for the legs and the hands and everything else, I imagine makes it a bit easier to cast said model with the detail that's there. But it's not bad by any means. The Najal Stormcaller, the old Lamarte's model, those models, I'm not going to say were bad, but did not age well at all. This one aged pretty well, all things considered, with all the new advancements in model making technology DW has done. It definitely is overshadowed by even a basic Space Wolf kit build, but in terms of detail and crispness, right? But it still is able to get the job done of representing a character, right? It doesn't feel like he's just some generic sergeant necessarily, and that's thankfully due to his wolf pelt and his head. Now, I'm not a fan of Ragnar Blackmane as a character, and I'm not a fan of the Space Wolves, as many people know, in terms of their, aside from just them as a force, their aesthetic, the Norse Viking aesthetic, hot take here, not a big fan of it. So, it's not for me, but they did a good job. Like, this doesn't feel in your face, want to be a tongue-in-cheek Norse god, but not with a different name. It feels like a important Space Wolf character. And I think the detail that's here is really detail that's layered on top of relatively plain power armor look, which isn't bad. Especially at this time when this model came out, doing intricate detail on power armor itself wasn't really a viable option, in my opinion, to look decent. It would be thicker, chunkier, clunkier. It just, I don't think, would be as clean and therefore as good looking as the Ragnar can be in this old design, the way he is now with his plain armor. The belt is obviously an addition to that. He's got some claw and tooth stuff. He's got the wolf pelt and everything else. But all that is layered on top of his armor and works to good effect. So all in all, not bad. The only thing that's blatantly, in my opinion, bad / cheesy / goofy is his combat clawed boots. Not that they're there. It's an interesting idea. It's the way they look. They look like 90s era moon boots, if you know what I'm talking about. They look like moon boots, or he's wearing platforms to kind of make himself taller. And it really does detract and it takes away, but not glaringly so. It's just that you look at the model, oh, it looks cool, look down at the feet and you go, what is that? And you look back at the model and try to forget about it. At least for me, I just think that, it just wasn't well achieved. I think the new model achieves that a lot better. Anyways, that aside, given the age of this model, the hair detail is not bad. The wolf pelt, while nowhere near what we can do in terms of wolf pelts nowadays from GW. I should say what they can do. I can't do it. But what they can do wolf pelt style-wise and just fur pelt style is a lot better nowadays. It still is passable and looks fine, right? So really can't complain too much about it. Especially, again, I'm looking at it in the context of how old the model is. If you really wanted to compare it to nowadays stuff, there'd be a lot to pick apart here. But all things considered, it's really not bad for its age. Everything stands out to make him look just that bit more special than your standard Space Wolf character. Or standard Space Wolf model, I should say, not character. He is a character. So, not bad. I don't hate it because it's a Space Wolf. I don't hate it because it's old. I really don't hate it at all. The character is not a character I particularly enjoy in the fluff of anything. But the style of the model lends itself well to carrying itself through the ages, you could say, of model making. It's definitely aged. You can definitely tell it's old by looking at it, but it wears its age well, is the best way I can put it. And it's not really that bad. It's just not going to be up to snuff nowadays. And that is through no fault of its own, just the better technology we have. So, all in all, not a bad model. As far as it going together and painting it, I have never seen it apart. I assume it's just body and backpack. That's my assumption based on how the pieces all look together. And I would paint the backpack separate from the body, paint them both, and connect them personally. The armor for Space Wolves is kind of a brighter blue-gray. It's different a bit now than it was when Ragnar Blackmane was first painted. But regardless, it's not that it's not an opaque color. It still is. It's just a bit of a brighter color. And when I see colors on a certain brightness level, I look at not wanting to use them to clean up. After doing it nicely, especially with the brighter highlight areas. What I mean is, instead of doing armor first, then the wolf pelt and stuff, and then cleaning up after the fact, like if he was a black armored model or a darker blue armored model or whatever, I would instead personally do all of my dirty dry brushing work first for the wolf pelt and hair and face, whatever I'm doing. Once that's all to a point where I'm okay with it, then I will carefully go in and actually, block in the armor and do the armor. Just because I think, to me, it feels a bit easier than going the other way in this particular case because of the brightness of the color. It's not a really translucent color, though, like white or yellow or red, so I guess it's up to dealer's choice. Outside of that, not too much else to say for building and painting it. Given that it's in this look at me pose from back in the day, nothing really gets in the way crazily. And that's part of the point, I think, is to look at all the detail and don't worry about the pose. Now we get both in miniature wargaming, which is cool. But this pose does mean that it'll probably be a bit easier to do everything and not worry about stuff overlapping and getting in the way. So, having said all that, does this model need a redo? Well, yeah, it did. And it got it. But it needed a redo really ever since the big overhaul we started seeing come 5th edition. We saw a lot of Space Marine and other factions getting a lot of nice work done to their model range and updated and everything, really starting with 5th edition or somewhere in 5th edition and then going forward. And ever since that started, models like Ragnar and other models definitely have been ones that I felt deserve a redo in some capacity. Now, obviously, with Primaris, he got redone into a Primaris Space Marine. I'm okay with that. That's the route things are going. Let's not panic about it and let's just move on. But regardless, Primaris or not, he definitely is due or was due for a redo and is, deserving of a redo. So with that said, we got it, and I really can't say anything too nitpicky about the new model personally. Again, the aesthetic is not for me, but the moon boots are gone, thankfully, so his combat claws make more sense. They added a bit more detail to his armor, particularly on his legs. The part that was basically a transfer or a paint job on his left leg is now a sculpted detail, which is great. I would have personally not changed the what's the word I'm looking for? The shoulder pad, because when you look at the actual product page and you do a 360 view, he now has kind of a much more basic Space Wolf shoulder pad on his left arm, and I would have preferred that to not have been the case. I would have preferred the somewhat cartoony way in which his shoulder pad is, but given the posing, that probably would not work out very well and definitely would have limited his arm movement, so I get it. I don't know, maybe in homage to his old shoulder pad, they could have done a front-facing wolf head instead of the profile. Just something to kind of tie it a bit more to his old-school shoulder pad would have been nice. But that's just me personally. And he doesn't really have the arm detail is different now that he has on his arms. So he's got little diamonds and little just ruins on, the runic scripting or whatever on his forearms, instead of just the geometric shapes that he had. I kind of wish they kept the geometric shapes and just, put it in there, sculpted detail onto the model. Personally, just to be another further tie-in, which is what I would have done if they had me in charge of it. I would have had a forward-facing wolf head, and I would have had those sculpted details on his forearms instead of what they did. Not that what he did looks bad. I would just do that to further tie in the models together, personally. But I think their posing is a good job. It's definitely a posing that's more in line with what I would have liked to have seen, given the dynamism of Ragnar Blackmane. And the only thing I would not have done on top of that is I would not have put him onto a piece of something ruined on the base, like the Imperial Eagle thing he's standing on. I totally understand why, because Gaskell is freaking huge, and they are the two character models, so you don't want the other character model to feel really puny tiny, so this helps him feel a bit bigger than he actually is when compared to the massive Gaskell model. So I get why they did it, so I can't fault him for it. It's just not, if I was looking at, redesigning Ragnar Blackmane, that's not what I would have done. I would have had him running across the base instead of running off of that piece, but it works. Anyways, yes, he deserves a redo. He got the redo. What they did is more or less what I would have done, minus what I've said already. And I think Space Wolf fans will be pleased with this really cool-looking new Ragnar Blackmane. But that'll get its own model when we break down when we come to it. So, anyways, this has been the old Ragnar Blackmane model breakdown ramble. An old model from Rogue Trader that wore its age pretty well. It definitely got overshadowed by even the basic plastic kits as they were getting redone and everything, but he never felt like he's just some basic sergeant, or he never felt like the Nijal Stormcaller model, the old model, for example, right? He's, I think, was able to exist and be for so long because his model was definitely doing some care back in the day, but the tropes of his age are clearly present, and it needed an update for a while, not because it was terrible, just because, he's a character model of importance in the Space Wolf lore and of fandom for the fans. So it's nice to finally see his redo. Anyways, thanks very much for tuning in and stopping by. Share your thoughts on Ragnar Blackmane, the model, the old one. Did you like it or not? Do you own it or not? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Be part of the conversation. Anyways, until next time, thanks very much for sticking through it. Take it easy.